Slow down, you move too fast. Gotta make the morning last. Kicking down the cobblestones. Looking for fun, feeling groovy. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-dum, feeling groovy.
Well, good morning, everybody, and I hope this is getting to be a groovy morning for all of you. We've got a great guest today, Marla Bace, and she's going to be sharing her story with us. But two things before we get started. This is episode 88. So we've done 88 episodes in this year. And just yesterday, we acquired our 102nd subscriber to Substack. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It's free, and it keeps you all updated on all the exciting things that we're doing. So hang on, Marla. I've got a quote here. Sandy is here, but she can hear us, but we can't hear her. So good old technical difficulties. Don't sign, Sandy. We'll be really lost then. Okay, so this one says, the more you know who you are and what you want, the less you let things upset you. And it's by Stephanie Perkins. I don't know. I think I have to think about that one. Then when I get upset, that's not because I don't know who I am. So, welcome, Marla. We're very happy to have you here today. And
Thank you.
I know a little bit about you, but our audience doesn't. So just give us a little capsulization of who you are, what you do.
Sure. After a 30-plus year career in, I'll say, corporate America, both small, mid-sized, Fortune 500 companies, I have now gone into consulting and coaching. And I've done it because my passion, as I was looking sort of towards the end of that career and thinking, what did I want to do next? I realized that I had really enjoyed working with the younger people on my teams in my organizations and helping them, as well as the cross collaborative groups that we were on, oftentimes when we decided to either divest a division or acquire another company. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm working with younger individuals. Some of my clients are young ladies who are going from senior manager to director roles, and they have bosses who have said, you need to have more presence. You're with senior men and you need to communicate with passion and with authority. And I remember being that person. And so I really love helping them. Or companies. I had one client this past year. He's been in business 30 some odd years, and he's getting ready to step down. And his second tier leadership team needed to be coached into being that organization and being in the right seats on the bus for the acquiring company to keep them. So I love working with people who love what they do. They may be a little misaligned in their situation, and just helping them get the confidence and the clarity to get to the next level for success.
I love it. So you don't just work with young people. So
No. That client I referenced is almost 80. So yeah, across the gamut.
To be exclusive. But so when you said the word presence and talking to young people about presence, the word that came to me was gravitas.
Yes.
So talk to me about how you impart the knowledge of becoming more present and more, I kind of used to call it putting my John Wayne belt on, you know what I mean? Yeah. So tell me more how you do that.
Well, in this day and age, sometimes it just starts with confidence and the sense of paying attention to what's going on around us.
Yeah.
That for me has been the biggest thing that I've been able, when you say impart on individuals, back in my day, it was making sure you showed up looking good in a suit. Now we're all on Zoom. So I can't impart that little piece of, or that nugget. But like I had a client this past fall. I still have her, but the issue that we were dealing with was she had her supervisor had shifted over 6 or 8 months, and the individual felt that she was not sure what was going on. And when she came to me, she said, I've always been really secure in what I do, and I'm pretty knowledgeable. I'm a subject matter expert in what I work in, but I'm having trouble with my supervisor. And what I realized was you're calling it gravitas. To me, it was being able to step into the moment and assess the situation and not get into, I'll call it drama, but the exchange that often happens, it's being able to recognize what's transpiring in the room and stepping aside. So one of the tools that I imparted to her was the idea of, if you start to see a situation, and it could be you and your superior or two other people, parent, child, where it's starting to be a little bit of a kerfuffle, try and be the adult in the room, because that's who everyone's going to listen to. And she's been imploring that in her role, and others around her have noticed it, and she's getting dividends from it. So oftentimes, like I say, it's just taking the moment to see and to know what's happening around them.
Yeah, that's so important, and not always the easiest thing to teach, especially if you're not in the room with them watching and can give them feedback, but
That's,
it's really important.
yeah. But to that point, one of the things that I do ask them to do is, before each session, share with me a win. And because they will show up with something they're challenged with, right?
Yeah.
But if you can understand the win, and you can understand what they did in that moment, and you can help them envision that and hold on to it,
Yeah.
they can resurrect it the next time that they're trying to implore a different tactic or have a different situation.
Building on the positives and what they do and building their confidence, which really, the confidence is built kind of one little step at a time. And it sort of has to be internal, because if I wait for validation, I always say they're not coming.
Yeah.
You have to be a validating machine, because they're not coming.
No, that's true. But the confidence also, while it's one step at a time within themselves, what at least I think my clients appreciate about me, and it's one of the things I think I have certain clients sort of gravitate to me, is I've sat in a lot of their shoes. I've been very fortunate to have a diverse career. I didn't have one path and move straight up one ladder. And oftentimes I found myself in those very challenging situations. So for example, I had someone this week who's come to me, and she's talking about needing to deal with different internal players. And I could see she really thought this was a unique challenge, a unique problem. And when I leaned in and I said, well, I bet you this person has X, Y, and Z personality, and they will often do A, B, or C, so you don't know where your footing is. Suddenly, like, I could see her shoulders relax. And it was just this sense of, oh, wait, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And it was like, no. And you start to have those conversations, and that adds to those pieces of confidence.
Yeah.
So the beauty of what I'm finding with my coaching is they're not totally in it alone, even though I'm not in the room with them, as you said. It's being able to give them perspective and context too.
Absolutely. That's good. That's good. Yeah. I like that. I really do. I mean, as being a former grade school teacher, that's kind of how, you work individually with the students and what works with them, and then building that picture of what works, and then it makes sense.
Yeah.
How can you not be the victim in this situation? If somebody's coming in as a bully, how can you neutralize that and hear them differently, and not back off and try not to be wrong?
Correct. Yeah. And the other piece of that, I think it probably happens with your students just as much as it happens with my clients, is getting them to actually name what their challenge is, right?
Yeah.
Often you said victim. How many times can they tell you the scenario or what's happening? And it's all of the the stuff that goes on in our mind, but what's really the underlying nugget
Yeah.
that is causing the stress, the angst, the inability to maybe learn that particular skill or class that you were teaching.
Yeah.
Yesterday I was talking to someone and actually talking about being, a victim, and they were showing up last year as a victim. And I said to them, well, how were you before? And they said, I was fearless. And I'm like, what changed? And it was like they really had to think about it.
Mhm.
And sometimes it's naming it and claiming it, right?
Absolutely. And naming it as an energy. And
Mm-hmm.
that, I know a little bit earlier, I don't think we were on air, but we were talking about being at the 10,000 foot level, looking at it as a story, because it
Mm-hmm.
really is just a storyline,
Yes.
that we've let ourselves come in and be a character, but
Mm-hmm.
go back up and seeing it from a different perspective, you can have some different thoughts about it, you know.
Yeah. And,
It,
and just like you said before we were on air, about it's always easier to help somebody else, right? It's harder to help yourself.
Mhm.
But I think what you're referencing is I had mentioned recognizing sometimes it's our inner critic talking.
Yeah.
And so if you could talk to that inner critic the way you would talk to a third party person,
Yeah.
you can help yourself. And sometimes it's just getting people to see it's the mindset, it's the energy, as you put it. It's that inner critic, or um, a saboteur, as positive intelligence now talks to us about. So which saboteur is it that we have trying to undermine that confidence that we're trying to build?
And then I would say a next level is not only if I can name it, but sometimes I can have the courage to name it to the other person,
Yes.
to kind of call them on their BS, because so often bullies back right off if you
Yeah.
call them on it, or notice,
Yeah.
I'm noticing this, I'm noticing that, but
Yeah.
that takes a lot of gravitas.
Well, and think in a lot of the situations that I'm coaching to, right? They're in business.
Mhm.
And so those situations are about trying to come together and either troubleshoot a problem or move a project forward, or whatever the case may be. So bringing it to the other person is actually easier if you take away the personal aspect of it.
Mhm.
How is it fact? How is it data? How is it something that isn't colored by emotion or a
Yeah.
filter or bias?
Mhm.
And that usually helps
Sure.
facilitate the situation. And it gives the individual that I'm working with the ability to see themselves start to get that gravitas or the leadership presence or the
Mhm.
confidence that we're talking about,
Right.
because they're able to strip away, the it's personal to me. This is more of a
Not
factor of,
the
yeah.
situation. Well, and one thing that I always started with, and we called it alignment, but we always would start with roll and goal. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so if this is my boss, I'm going to choose to have a different conversation with that person, and maybe not be as confrontive as I would with a peer.
Correct. Yeah.
Because unless I want to get fired. But
No.
yeah, but bosses can, come around too. It just is a different strategy. But
Yeah, it's figuring out, and I appreciate you actually saying that, because one of the things that I will do with people, if they're having trouble on how to have that difficult conversation, I will work with them and ask them if they've taken any kind of personality assessment, and not a Myers-Briggs, but truly like how you show up in the workplace, how you're perceived, that type of thing. And oftentimes, if they know of the DISC or they know of the Colby, and I can identify where they are,
mhm,
then I can get them to try and identify the person they're trying to interact with. If it's that difficult boss, if it's a difficult salesperson, if it's a difficult counterpart in the organization. And once you understand who or what they might be,
mhm,
then you give them tools, right? Because it's talking about, okay, here's how you perceive, here's how you interact, here's how they perceive, here's how they interact. What's the best way to put yourself in their shoes so you're having
Sure.
a positive exchange and it's not where you have to worry about saying the wrong thing or being confrontational.
Yeah, or just reframing things. I used to use the Myers-Briggs in my trainings,
Okay.
um, and did it that way. Though I mean, I had a boss that when I would go in for meetings, and I'm much more of a circuitous talker, and I need to process, and I don't often get straight to the point. And I changed my tactic with him. When I would go in, I would have a sheet of paper with 3 bullet points on it, and I would try to summarize it very briefly and not take personally when he would look me in the eye. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? And so then, I learned how to succeed.
I was going to say, and I'm sure you saw a huge difference, right, when you acclimated
Yeah,
to how he needed to process information,
yeah,
right? And it made your job easier ultimately. You
absolutely.
had to prepare a little bit more before the conversation. You had to put up a couple of boundaries,
Yep,
but you were able to facilitate a successful exchange.
yeah, and that information, no matter what assessment we use, is just so valuable.
Mhm.
Because you can start understanding people rather than just trying to fight with them. You know.
Oh, absolutely. I had a scenario this past year where I had two people in a room and they had worked together for decades and they thought they got along really well. And I could see as the outsider, they were not communicating. And we did the Colby A assessment. And it turned out, and I'm not going to go into all the detail, but it turned out in one very specific category, one of the people were, a 10 out of 10, which basically meant for them to feel comfortable in their role, they needed not just the book in front of them and the table of contents in each chapter and the appendix, but they also needed the cliff notes and a summary from AI. And I mean, a 10 out of 10. And the person that they had been working with was someone who would operate as a 4 in that category, which basically meant they could glance at the table of contents, have their filter and the knowledge that they needed. So they were answering the person who needed a 10 with the amount of information on a 4.
Yeah.
And the person would never, they felt like they were being annoyed. And it was like, you weren't giving them what they needed for them to do their job. And you needed to be able to talk and come to a middle point
Yeah.
so that you guys could both move forward. So
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. It's really about understanding. And that's where I love coming into an organization where when they're functioning well, but it's just now how do they get to the next level?
Sure.
Because oftentimes it's those little nuances that people aren't realizing will exponentially move them in their career forward or their businesses forward.
Absolutely, absolutely. I have to interrupt us just for a minute and it sort of goes along with when we're talking about communication, but I have to tell Sandy something. Sandy, last week, there was something that happened. I don't remember what, but it totally hit me, and I took it personally. And, Marla, I teach this stuff, I should know. It hit me, and Sandy and I are working on doing not really a series, but I have certain stories that I've used through the years, and she reminded me a couple weeks ago about my Velcro jacket story, and so I used to tell her group and other people, whatever you do when you go into a room, take off your Velcro jacket, leave it in the car, throw it away. And and she kept remembering the picture of that, and I had to literally say, "Oh, I left my Velcro jacket on," and it took me 2 days to get over it.
Oh, wow.
Self differentiation, and it wasn't even that big of a deal. But I guess I must have been vulnerable that day. But using the skills that I impart to other people is really difficult sometimes to place on myself. But we're going to do a little dialogue here soon on the Velcro jacket, and we've got a couple of other ones that we're going to talk about. But I had to tell her that before I forgot. So,
Yeah.
how are you, Marla, at taking your own advice?
We talked a little bit about this before we came on air. I think that's everyone's biggest challenge. But I actually have been working very diligently on that over the last couple of months, as we had mentioned. You know, I oftentimes will ask my clients at the end of a year to look back over the last year and say, what's working for you? And so this past December, I did that. And having been in marketing for, I'll say 20 plus years, you know what you're supposed to do.
Uh,
And I looked, and there was an activity that I was doing, and it wasn't paying a lot of dividends, and it was causing me angst. I hate doing video recordings, and I was doing a recording a week and posting that to YouTube, and it was doing nothing. And even though everyone said in 2025 you need video to have your business, I gave myself a little grace. And I said, you know what? There's no ROI in this. All the other stuff that I've done all these years is paying things forward, and that's where my time and energy needs to be invested. And I actually just put out a newsletter this week telling my my audience that it's like, I ask people to do this, and I did it. So I'm letting go of long form video in 26, and some other things as well. I think I had mentioned to you before we came on air, I have a blog coming out next week about a personal situation that occurred over the last 2 months. And I'm very good at listening to my intuition and doing all the things I work with my clients about in business situations, and I don't do them personally.
yeah.
And right. And Sandy, you're saying yes. And so I had that situation with a personal life over the last 2 months. And I really put it in a blog, and I said, you know what? This isn't just about leadership when you show up from 9 to 5.
Yeah.
It's leading yourself in your own life, and you have to apply those things to yourself. What's the old adage when you're on a plane, when the air mask comes down, you put it on yourself before you put it on someone else? And it's difficult, Sandy and Sue. I mean, it's
It
a
is.
challenge.
And when we are transparent about it, it teaches everybody a better lesson than us just pretending we have it all together.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I wrote about it, because I also felt, I'm a firm believer. I do this with my clients. I ask them to journal, and I'm like, you don't have to do it every day. You don't have to do it long. Just, get your thoughts out. And so that's why I wrote about it, and I'm putting it out to my audience, because I'm human. I'm not infallible, right? And if I put it out there too, it means more to me. I'm not going to let myself do it again. And that's why I ask my clients to, I won't do any, I won't ask my clients to do stuff that I won't ask of myself, right?
Personal ability, that's true. And transparency, it's huge. I mean, as a teacher of both kids and adults, the best thing you can do as a teacher is to be a learner. Now, I always say I teach to learn. And I'm not one of those people that have to have all the stuff in front of me. I just kind of dive in and go with the students, and then the learning germ is in the room.
Oh, I can't agree with that more. I was talking to my team actually just before this, and they were asking me, about the type of clients that, I'm working with. And in 26, I'm really excited because I've made a decision to start working more with younger people, and I've put a handful of slots in my calendar that are much cheaper so I can work with them. But it's because those people are the ones who are just stepping now into those leadership roles where, to your point, Sue, it's you have to not only just be a lifelong learner, and they're coming to me so they can trust their intuition and they can have that leadership's presence we talked about. But oftentimes they're on that crux, right, where you're going from always having to have 100% right because you're looking for the gold star to being able to operate in the 80-20, right? Because if you get 80% of it, and you're willing to acknowledge that and fall on your sword that maybe you missed some of it, that's where the growth happens.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. We've got two ladies coming on later on this morning for us, and I'm just learning about the fact people do this, but they are improv gals, and they do leadership coaching through improv. They do seminars and stuff.
Yeah.
And I just love, I mean, I'm an old theater arts major. So
Okay.
I love this, and I'm just now learning about it. I don't know where my head's been the last 20 years, but it's just wonderful. And it's learning to be in the moment and, react appropriately, or not really react, but just, be in the moment and come up with that fluidity and, whatever happens.
Right. We used to call it thinking on our feet, right?
But not too much thinking. It's more reacting. You know what I
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but I love the fact, and we all are learning how to go with our intuition, and how so many times, if I practice that, I I am at least moving in the right direction.
Oh, you're so spot on. That blog I was talking about talks about that. And I want to underscore that statement because this has been a huge aha for me as you talk about learning. I had gotten received internal guidance in September to start talking about some of these more woo concepts, but very much in an executive type of way. So instead of saying maybe your higher self, it's your intuition and things like that. And so I started putting that into my content earlier in the fall, and I thought it was going to fall on its face. I'm finding the engagement has actually gone up almost 5 times. I think we're coming into a time period in our country, in our society, in just how people speak. I
Yeah,
mean, being in yoga class is no longer, the
right.
1%. The majority are doing that. But to talk about intuition as a leadership skill
Yes.
and listening to that inner voice and quieting yourself for a moment
Mhm.
and being okay to not react immediately to a situation, but to sit and think about it and respond appropriately.
Right.
Those are going to become the skills that are going to shine
Mhm.
in the next 3 to 5 years.
That's right.
And, those were things that I was doing innately in my career, and I never realized it until just before I left corporate. And I had a boss who was intuitive enough to say something to me,
Yeah.
and it was given to me as constructive criticism.
Mhm.
But he said, oftentimes you'll sit back in a room and you'll watch what's going on.
Mhm.
He's like, and you know what you need to say, and you're not necessarily leaning forward and sharing that, and you're doing a disservice to the group. And it's because my intuition was ahead of me, and I didn't have the facts, right, to necessarily stand out there. And 10 years ago, you couldn't have just said, I have a feeling.
Well,
But
and
now you
yeah,
can.
absolutely. And the thing is, it takes courage.
Yeah,
That's the other thing. At least the first few times you do it, it takes some courage to stick your toe in that water. And we've found that in our podcast too.
yeah,
Just recently, the past couple episodes that we've had, we had a gal ask us if we could pray. We had a guy who literally said, I'm following guidance from God, and we were just, like I said, we were a little tentative at first to bring in anything up, and people would allude to it and we would allude to it. But you're right, you can be much more open about it now.
yeah.
People are open to it, and it is, it opens a whole new realm.
It
You
does. And it's funny. We talking about analytics and stuff. For me, the piece of content that I put out there that had the most traction in the most places last year, the topic was about trusting yourself, and how trusting yourself first and foremost in leadership
know.
will help you, as you said, navigate all the uncertainty or the ambiguity of what's going on.
Mhm.
So you might have someone that you don't think you know how they're always going to react, but they're always going to be chaotic because you don't know how they're going to react. And then there's always going to be the person who's a naysayer. and those are things that you may not feel that you can trust, but you need to be able to trust how you're going to react to it, right? So to your point, it's whatever that force is that is going to help you in those situations, you need to own it
Yeah.
is the word that I would use, right?
Well, and even when we use the term energy,
Mhm.
just the fact that you're moving into what you know to be true. I know if it's not true for someone else, it's not, but still, that is a huge um, gravitas piece of energy
Oh
that
yeah.
is there if you're dancing around it.
Yeah, no, it's yeah, there's so many different ways of talking about that energy now that's out there, but it's really what you're talking about, whether it's your misaligned work environment or you're facing burnout or you're what it really is, Sue, you hit it. You're not being true to your energy. You're not being true to what you know. And if you're fighting against that,
Mhm.
that's where all the minutia happens, all the drama happens.
And that's everybody knows if you aren't being you and
Yeah.
bringing yourself, even if that's makes you realize you don't belong there anymore.
Mhm.
you know that's really where it's at, and then you trust the fact that you're going to go out and find your flock.
Yeah, or find the right place where you're supposed to be to make a living. And I that is a topic I have to talk with a lot of my clients about when they're in a misaligned situation. You have free will, you have free choice. And yes, you might be over 50 and all those
Yep.
things, but what can you do to either make it better so that you are not creating that misaligned situation, or where can you go and what are you willing to give up so that you can be happy for 8 or 10 hours a day?
Yeah, and it's not
Mhm.
worth what the cost is.
Yeah.
Whether it's your health or whatever the cost is, it's not worth it. And we need to teach young leaders to figure that out,
Right.
because it's
And
it's
yeah,
unfair. It's unfair to pretend.
yeah. And I've seen it personally to myself. I mean, the last full-time position that I took because I thought, oh, I just need to go back to work. I don't want to be an entrepreneur anymore. I was there about 9 months and I realized it was such an unhealthy environment. And that person brought me in to help them grow and build their business, but they really didn't want that. They wanted to do things their way. And it took such courage and tenacity. And I walked out. And I had to restart my business. I had to do a whole lot of other things. But I have to tell you, while the decision was heavy and the decision was hard, the reward on the other side of it has been so plentiful and so wonderful. And the energy has just been unbelievable. And that's why oftentimes in my marketing or in my website, I will say to people, I've sat in your shoes. And I won't ask anyone to do stuff that I wouldn't have or haven't done for myself and don't have the experience of sharing. But you're so right. The downside to not making those decisions
Yeah,
is,
yeah.
um, it's heavy.
Not worth
It's the
it.
opposite of that light energy, right?
And your people will find you.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
I mean, then that's I guess, the intuitive leap that you actually are opening the doors to the people that want to find you, because you're
Hmm.
locked up in a
Right.
organization that is toxic for you.
Yeah, and how many times, and people don't realize this, has the universe rewarded you for making the tough decisions?
Mhm.
Because what it's doing is it's oppressing you for not making the tough decision, right? That hard environment, the
That's right.
job you don't want to show up for on Monday morning is just getting harder and more oppressive.
Yeah,
But if you look back and you think of all even the small hard choices you made over your life and coming out on the other side, you are 9 times out of 10 rewarded, not in a small way, but a much bigger way than that hard decision that you made.
yeah,
And it's even within your job, within your home life, within everything that you do. When you just push things off and you don't address them, they get heavier, they get harder.
that's
And
right.
that's something that I just think so many more of us are becoming aware of. Or at least we're talking more openly about it, right? 10 years ago, we wouldn't have been like, oh, the universe rewards me.
Well, and it's, when you are get so calloused with all the negative stuff, it's hard to hear that still small voice.
Yeah.
But you need, as you unpack it, it gets a little easier. And every time you have that win, oh, this is working. Oh, I met that person. Oh, that person wants to work with me. It's a blessing, a real blessing.
And I think we had said it this too before we had come on air, that is the one benefit of age, right? You get to do things wrong a few times that when you do it right, you really get to see the difference.
Yeah. Somehow it's getting in there, huh? Yeah.
Yeah.
So Marla, if you were to talk to your ideal young client,
Mm-hmm.
what's one thing you might say to them today?
Um, to invest in themselves. I think, Sue, you said you're a lifelong learner. I was talking to another coach this morning, and we've talked about the fact that we've always had coaches. If you're trying to do this alone, and by this, it could be your career or it could be a difficult situation at home. You've talked about the grief program that you have on your podcast. I mean, I had a lot of grief very young in my life, and I wouldn't have been the success I am if I hadn't had at that time the right therapist and at different points in my career, the right coaches. If you're struggling with something, chances are someone's been there before you have.
Yep.
They've gone through it. They've learned the hard way, or maybe had a real big win that they can share with you.
Yeah.
So the one piece of advice to my ideal client is invest in yourself and don't make this harder for yourself than it needs to be.
Yeah, that's great. What's coming into my mind is a few of the people that we've had some people come on, and they're pretty reticent leaders. They don't want to admit that they're leaders, and they are. But we came up with a category of community builder.
I love that.
And even the people that were high in servant leadership would
Mm-hmm.
say, "Oh yeah, I'm a community builder," and so yeah, build your, find your people,
Yeah.
They're out there and they're there to support you and help you, and
Oh,
don't be afraid to
absolutely.
ask those questions.
And I would take that, one further, Sue. So many companies, right, have boards of directors. Have an advisory board. I used to, as I look back and I listen to you, I used to have a group of fellow women colleagues. We didn't actually work together. We just found each other through either the young professionals group or whatever. We had lunch once a month, no matter what. And we would talk about stuff, and it was unadulterated. And I used to come home, my husband at the time would look at me and be like, "You had your lunch today." And it was just like energetically, I didn't realize how much it was filling my cup up.
Oh,
So
wow.
yes, build your advisory team, invest in a coach, do whatever you need to do to be smarter, more productive, more emotionally secure, and not have to suffer victimhood in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, 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 what fills your cup, and that's almost more important than some of those graduate classes you think you need.
Oh yeah.
Spend the money on something that fills you up rather than, makes that hole in the bucket bigger.
Yes, absolutely. And even in your days, as like the courses and whatever it is, I try and challenge people. We all do so many shoulds in a day. I should go to a networking event. I should get the laundry done, whatever the should is. Every day, make sure you pick one thing that's going to refill that cup up. What is it that makes you happy?
Uh-huh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah, joy and happiness are very important.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. So we kind of close out, and I guess Sandy will have to do her sign language here. What is one takeaway from our conversation today?
Um, I think the topic that's come up a lot that I really enjoyed was being a lifelong learner and always opening yourself up to new opportunity, new knowledge, new relationships, new ways of communicating. I
Oh,
love that.
I love it
Thank you.
too. Yeah. I'm taking away just a refreshment filling of my cup and loving the fact that you are leaning into your intuition and
Thank
knowing what to do. And I
you.
thank you so much. So, Sandy,
Thank
we're
you.
glad you're here. You're going to have to talk to us later. Um, so, okay. Well, we'll see you on the other side. And thank you so much for coming on. And we
Thank
want
you.
you back, whatever category you want to fill in or just want to come and be filled up on a day. We'd love to have you. And
Thank you.
we'll talk to you again.
Thanks.
Thanks.